Thank you, Jerry, so much for being here with us and speaking. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker also does not need any introduction. Congressman BobGoodlatte began his 9th term serving in the 6th District in 2009. During his time in Congress, Bob has made a name for himself as a leader on the internet, high-tech, and agriculture issues. He is the co-chair of the Congressional Internet Caucus and chairman of the House Republican High Technology Working Group. In January 2009, Bob was elected to serve as the vice-ranking member on the House Judiciary Committee. Bob has served on the House Agriculture Committee in a variety of leadership roles. Bob's service to the people of the 6th District began in 1977 when he became 7th District Director for former Congressman Caldwell Butler. He was a partner in the law firm of Byrd, Kinder, and Huffman, working there from 1981 until taking office. It is my pleasure to introduce and welcome Congressman BobGoodlatte.
I'm here. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
It's my pleasure to welcome my new colleague and your old friend, Jerry Connolly, to the 6th Congressional District of Virginia, and to welcome all of you back to the homestead. We very much appreciate your holding this meeting here year after year. It is a treasure, the homestead. It is a property of great historic interest to people, not just here in Virginia, but all across the world. But what really makes the homestead great are the people, some of whom have been here for decades, working to take care of your needs, and they continue to do it year in, year out, and even in these tough economic times. So thank you for bringing your business here. We very much appreciate it. You know, over the years I've been successful in luring a great many of the people I meet in Washington to come down here, to hold the various functions here, and to gather. And when they come down and find out that we have 2 counties in my congressional district, I'm sure there are some others around Virginia, where there are no traffic lights in the entire county, they are thoroughly impressed by the rural nature of this area, so close to Washington, D.C. So as you move around the county, proceed through each intersection with great caution. We don't want the Bath County Board of Supervisors or the Highland County Board of Supervisors to decide that they finally do need to install that traffic light. You know, there are a number of people here from the various boards in the congressional district I represent, and others that I've met around Virginia, but many that I've never had the opportunity to meet before. And just when you think that everyone knows who you are because you're an elected official, you get your comeuppance. Mine didn't occur at Denny's. It occurred at a nursing home that I was visiting, discussing the health care reform debate that's going on in Washington. And I saw a lady sitting there, and I went up to her and I said, "Do you know who I am?" And she looked at me and she said, "No, but if you ask at the nurse's station, they might be able to tell you." And then recently another woman came up to me and she said, "You know, you look almost exactly like Congressman BobGoodlatte." And I thought to myself, well, at least I'm making a little progress. So I smiled and I said, "Well, yes, ma'am, I do." And she said, "It must make you so mad, don't it?" Those stories are apocryphal and they are not copyrighted. So officials, use them as you will. I want to say how much I appreciate Jerry's comments. He has taken a perspective that I welcome. One of the things that we are always concerned about in Washington are the unfunded federal mandates that come down to you. Obviously, you are very interested in and concerned about what other resources might be available to you, but so often they come to you with undesired strings attached. One of those is No Child Left Behind. In fact, That was legislation that received very broad bipartisan support. After all, when you have legislation that's supported by George W. Bush and Ted Kennedy, you're pretty well covering the spectrum of American politics, and it had that support. But right from the beginning, I was concerned that states like Virginia, that already had outstanding accountability standards for their students, were going to have a problem with this legislation. I worked unsuccessfully because of the fact you have such broad bipartisan support. There was no need to take into account at that time some of the details, but one of the details was that states that already have programs like Virginia's Standards of Learning, which, as you may recall, was passed with a Republican governor, George Allen, and a Democratic legislature, and had very bipartisan support here, but also a great deal of angst by local school boards and school administrators and teachers and members of boards of supervisors and city councils who had to figure out how to make this difficult challenge work. And it took several years to make it work. It still has challenges confronting it, but when you layer on top No Child Left Behind, which is good in its intentions were to cut some of the strings facing you in terms of the flexibility of using federal dollars in education, and to have some accountability for the use of those dollars. Those are two admirable objectives. The problem, however, lies in the fact that when you layer over No Child Left Behind on top of the standards of learning, with different tests in different years, with different standards, you are adding a monstrous problem to local government. So I, with Senator Allen, introduced legislation to give a waiver to those states that were already having high accountability standards. And we will continue to press for that. I'm going to reintroduce that legislation in this Congress, and when the reauthorization for No Child Left Behind comes up, I will join with Jerry Connolly in making sure that local governments are treated fairly in this process, either with that kind of a waiver or with substantial reforms to the current No Child Left Behind program. But mandates are a problem throughout federal government legislation. Some of you may be aware that in the healthcare reform measure that passed the House just 2 days ago, it includes a significant increase in the Medicaid program. The Medicaid program is an important program for low-income people, but it includes an unfunded mandate in terms of increasing the eligibility standards to the states, which is going to require the states to step up to the plate and come up with billions here in Virginia and many, many billions more across the country to comply with it. So those kind of things need to be addressed and need to be taken into consideration when we move forward with legislation. It is a serious problem and one that needs to be addressed. But that's not why I'm here today. I want to talk to you about the concern I have about the relationship between the federal government and local governments. The fact of the matter is that the problem that we face is that the traditional way